here we are, boys and girls, deep into enemy territory down here in San Antonio, all to put this beautiful PC650 into service. Luckily, they have done a lot of the work for me. They put all the catwalks on, counterweight, pin the arm and boom on, and all I gotta do is pin that arm cylinder, put on the bucket, do a short make ready, put some stickers on it, paint some numbers on there, and then outside of doing some tuning on the hydraulic system, man, it'll be a easy day today. Let's get to it. Welcome back to the Shade Tree Certified YouTube channel, everyone. I'm your host, Jacob, as always. Today I've got behind me a PC650 LC-11. This is a brand spanking new unit that just dropped off of the truck. So right behind me right here is the bucket. And as you can see, it's not pinned to the excavator. So I'm going to show you what goes into getting one of these machines ready to go in the dirt. The bucket is not mounted on the machine, obviously. I'm going to have to pull the pins out of the end of the stick and out of the dog bone there. Not the dog bone, out of the H-link. And then get this bucket pinned on. But before I do that, I got to go up here and take that pin out and then connect the arm cylinder to the arm so I can actually use the arm when I'm pinning this bucket. I'm going to get it as close to the ground as possible just so my ladder is as short as I can. I don't like being real far up in the air on a ladder for obvious reasons. So I'm going to get my crane out, get that pin pulled out of there, rig my lifting equipment up on the cylinder so I can hold. I'm going to have to hold it up in order to pin it where I need to go. And so outside of the obvious putting the bucket on and pinning the stick cylinder, a couple more things that we usually have to do when these things come in, because this one is it's been put together a little bit more than they usually are. So usually when these things are shipped, they don't have a stick on them and they don't have a boom on them, and then all the cylinders are on a pallet and everything like that. When they're delivered, you got to put the boom cylinders on, you got to put the boom on, you got to mount the arm cylinder to the top of the boom, and then obviously you got to pin the stick on. And then in addition to all of that, these tracks are a variable gauge track. Well, variable. They can be moved in about 8 inches on each side for ease of transport. It reduces the width of the machine by about a foot, a little bit more than a foot on each side. I don't know, probably a good 8 to 10 inches, because this bolt right here actually moves in and bolts in this bolt hole, and then there's a hole drilled in the roller frame basically right here, and whenever you move this bolt into right here, you stick another bolt in right there, so you've got these two bolts on each pad holding the track frame on. It's not meant to be run in its full capacity like that. I've actually seen track frames break off before when people, run them with literally half of the bolts holding the roller frames on. So it's a variable gauge track on it, but like I said, they're not meant to be run like that. It's just solely for transport. And then they don't come with these catwalks on the side installed. They don't have those ladders on there just for sake of width. You don't have to permit them. You can have less pilot cars. Your routing is a little bit more flexible whenever you have a narrower load. So you've got that, and then the counterweight usually doesn't come on them either, but this one happens to have a counterweight remover, so even if I did have to put it on, it wouldn't be very hard. The counterweight remover makes it super duper easy, and along with like handrails and stuff like that they take off to reduce the height of the load whenever they're come in. I've never had one torn down past having the boom off of it. So like I said, the boom's taken off, the boom cylinders are off it. The arm cylinder's usually pinned to the it's usually just pinned to the boom, but I've had to put them on before a couple of times, and then obviously the arm's not put on them. So that's a little bit of what we got to do. All I got to do today is pin the bucket onto the arm and then pin up that arm cylinder. So I'm going to go ahead and get my crane out and get this arm dropped down, get my crane rigged up to the top of there. So you'll see me right here putting my outriggers down on my truck, getting my crane out, getting it set up. You'll notice when I climb up on my ladder in this A-frame configuration that I'm really stretching to reach that pin, and I end up reconfiguring my ladder into just leaning on the side of the arm. I don't typically like to do that just because it's less stable, but Right here, it took me probably 15 or 20 trips back and forth to the cab to get that pin exactly lined up. After I got it lined up, it literally pushed in there by hand, and that's just one of the frustrations of working by yourself. So I ended up getting that thing lined up, and that's it for pinning the arm cylinder. As you can see, got the arm cylinder pinned on there. I'm probably going to cut part of that footage out, which you've already seen. But it took me probably 20 trips back and forth between getting in the cab, moving the cylinder a little bit, trying to push it in there, trying to whack it in there. All I had was a 4-pound sledge up there. I don't really feel comfortable swinging my 20-pounder up there in the air like that, especially since I couldn't get my ladder directly under the pinhole. That would have been a lot easier. But it is what it is. That's what you're dealing with when you're a field mechanic and you always work by yourself. Makes it a lot easier when you've got 2 people, but you know, that's part of being a field mechanic. So next step, obviously, is pinning the bucket on, and I'm going to take these 2 pins out. Luckily, the guys at the stockyard cleaned most of the rust off. There's actually hardly any in there. I'm really impressed. And they greased the pins a little bit. Most of the time, when they ship these things across the ocean from Japan, Komatsu puts what's called Cosmoline on here, which is pretty much, I don't know, a dried up grease is what it ends up being. It's super hard to get off of the pins. You got to spray them down with solvent, let it sit, scrape it off, then hit it with a wire wheel. Super pain in the ass. So props to the dude at the King Stockyard down in the Port of Houston or Port of Galveston or wherever it is. Never been there. Wouldn't mind going. But I'm going to pull these 3 bolts out of each pin and pull those pins out of there, set them over on my bumper, and then stick the arm in this bucket and see how unlevel it is. If it is unlevel, I may have to get some blocks and put under one side of it to pick it up a little bit. It looks like it's leaning over that way, but the machine's also leaned over that way, so it may work out perfect. It's worked out in the past for me when I didn't expect it to. So I'm gonna get these pins ripped out of here and keep on trucking. Thing I do want to bring up right quick, when you're assembling a new machine, if they did their job, the seals for the bucket pins should be in the cab somewhere. I haven't looked yet. I forgot that sometimes they do this, sometimes they don't, but you want to not forget to install the dust seals in these 2 pin bores before you put it in. If you don't, this sand is literally the consistency of like a coarse ground flour. So if you don't put these seals in there, all that dirt, dust, and grime is going to get into your pin bores, and it's going to act like a sandblaster in there and just lapping compound. That's what it is. Grease, sand equals lapping compound. So let's go look and see if they put these seals in there. Oh, look, they sure did. Every new machine that I've ever seen has this clear tubing in there. I'm not really sure what that's for because there's not a place in the assembly manual for that. So if you know what that is, comment and tell me. Okay, so here's some shims too. I went ahead and ordered some bucket shims from a competing dealer on the way down here to San Antonio. Here are those dust seals I was talking about. Those are all the same size. It looks like they're the same size. So there's 4 dust seals. I'm gonna dig through this parts box and see if I can find the other ones. Let's see, are they in here? So that's that block off plate I was talking about. All right, I don't know what this harness is for. Controller, I'm gonna have to dig into the assembly manual for that. Caps and plugs. I don't see any other grease seals. So these are the O-rings that go on the bucket ears, so we're gonna need those. And then I'm gonna need those dust seals that I just dug out, but interesting. So I'm gonna have to dig through here and make sure that I got all the dust seals that they sent. And if they didn't send the correct dust seals, then I'm gonna have to get in the parts book and order some. I went ahead and checked the part numbers on these. These are indeed 2 different part numbers. This is a, let's see, 20972-12211, and then this is a ends in 2150. So these are 2 different part numbers, and they match the part numbers that are in the parts book for the end of the stick. So I'm gonna leave all this crap here. I'm gonna take these dust seals and O-rings down here and the shims and put them on the back of my truck. I'm gonna clean those seal counter bores out right quick, and then I'm gonna go over here and put the dust seals in. Then we'll be able to pin that big bad bucket on there. Heck yeah, moving right along. Stuff like this amazes me and irritates me at the same time. I'm just putting the stick down in this bucket right quick to make sure, you know, that the bucket's not, you know, crooked or anything like that. Look at that, dude. I got it dang near freaking perfect on my first try. I'm not even joking. It's my first try. Y'all aren't gonna believe me, but I got that thing dead nuts perfect on my first shot. Well, this side's a little bit low for the bucket, but you know, what do you do? That other side's straight. I can knock that pin in right now, but I'm gonna have to put in the O-rings, and then it looks like it'll probably take a shim or two. Over here I can see a little bit of daylight right there through that pin boss, and this side it's pretty straight, so I'll probably put one shim in this thing just for shits and grins. Pardon my language, but I'll probably put a shim in here just because I got them. And anyway, I'm gonna lift this thing up and I'll show you a little trick on how to get those O-rings to stay in there while you're pinning the bucket. So for those wondering, this is my trick, my special life hack on how to get these O-rings in between the bucket and the boom when you're working by yourself. Normally I'd have someone stand over here and hold them, but since I'm by myself again, you know, struggles of a field mechanic, you just set them on top of the bucket here. When you put the boom down in here, they'll fall right into place. You got to be kind of quick about it. If you're really slow and you just touch it, sometimes they'll fall out. You just got to be careful not to cut them. I have before gotten these things and like electrical taped them right here. That way, you know, that top part is out of the way. Just, you know, run some tape around there, but I don't feel like getting my hands all greasy inside these these pin bores. So I'm gonna set up my camera to do a time lapse on this. Hopefully it comes out good so y'all can see it. But I'm gonna stick this thing down in there, knock the pin in, and then I'll get going on pinning the H-Link after that. So right here you're seeing me pin the main top bucket pin right there, and I put the pin in there. Stupid me, forgetting to clean the dang paint out of that pin bore. They did grease it before they painted it, but all that stuff built up in there just completely prevented me from putting the pin into the bushing and the stick. I did get it started with a sledgehammer, but I quickly realized that that 20-pound stinking sledge wasn't going to be enough, so I got my persuader out, knocked that pin in there, got a couple shims put in it. It did take 2 shims, and then when I get started on the H-Link, I had an issue with the shim that prevented me from putting the pin all the way through. I actually had the incorrect size shim in there, so I had to take it back apart and put the correct shim in there. And then after that, I was able to push that one in by hand, so that one went really smoothly. Well, needless to say, that top pin right there was a little bit of a struggle. You saw me freaking beating on that thing with my persuader bar right here. That's just the luck of the draw when it comes to lining up these buckets. This thing was dead on this side, but on that side, I was about a 1/4 inch low on, like the bucket was a 1/4 inch tilted that way. So as soon as I got about halfway through the bushing on this side, it just completely stopped moving, but there's nothing I can do. I did kind of try to push the arm of the machine this way a little bit. I don't know if you could see that on the time lapse, but I did get that pin in there, obviously. And then this one right here, I couldn't get it lined up at first. You saw me hit it a couple of times. Then I was like, I'm not freaking beating on that thing like I did that one. So I literally just touched it and sucked that rod up just a little bit, like literally barely even noticeable. And I was able to push that pin in by hand. But for whatever reason, the shims that Komatsu sent for this bucket, well, this is a rusted one, but I have one, there it is. I have one that I put it up next to the bucket bore. I'll do it right now. I put it up next to this bucket bore, and I thought, oh yeah, it fits. But you see how it's like, you know, you see that little bit right there? Well, that pin freaking stuck solid on this shim, and when I tried to hit it with my hammer, it just basically like pushed out the inside of this shim right here. So I don't know if these are like for the buckets or for the arm cylinder or what they're for, but they don't work on the freaking bucket pins. So I ended up having to put one of those shims off of that pin in right here, and it's got a little bit of play in it just because these pins are almost the same size. This one is literally like a 1/4 inch smaller in diameter, so that'll work. And then I was putting the seals on the H-link right here, and I realized that this bucket has some it has like some little reliefs cut right here. See if I can roll that O-ring back over. Yeah, so it has these little grooves cut in here where the bushing is pushed in, or where the bushing, I guess, indexes onto, and those are perfect for rolling those O-rings up onto when you install them, when you're installing the bucket. So I didn't even have to set those up there on top of the bucket when I was putting it on. I mean, I did, and it worked fine, but I mean, those little grooves right there, they fit those O-rings perfectly. So I was just able to roll those O-rings up out here for this H-link, and it came out, you know, that was really easy. I was super surprised. So I'm about to put these caps back on here. You want to make sure that you Loctite the ever-loving bejesus out of these things. What I'll usually do, like for machines that have quick couplers on them especially, not answering that yet. When these machines have quick couplers on them and the bucket pins are never coming out, I'll take like a 1-inch diameter flat washer and put it in between the heads of the bolt after I put that little collar on, and I'll just tack that nut, or I mean, I'll tack that washer onto the bolt heads so the bolts don't loosen up and come out, because I've seen that before. But with this one, I don't know if they're gonna have to take this bucket off for shipping anytime soon, so I don't want to tack those on just because it's an added, you know, it's an added level of security, but it's also an added level of pain in the ass for whoever has to take the bucket off. I'm gonna put these collars on right quick after I clean out those bolt holes so the bolts actually have something to stick to with the Loctite. Put those collars on, torque them with Loctite, and then I'll move on to the, I'll put stickers on it next. We usually paint our unit numbers on here, but since this is a customer machine and I didn't bring my stencils with me because I don't normally do make readies, it's not getting the stock numbers painted on it or the unit number. So after I get done putting this bucket retainers on, I'm gonna go ahead and start the tuning portion, which is basically just I go through the hydraulic system and check cycle times and pressures, and if everything is within the middle of the spec or at the upper end of the allowable limits, I leave it alone. If there's anything that's at the lower end of the limits, I'll go ahead and adjust it and, you know, just optimize the operation and performance of the machine. So I'm gonna put those retainers on right quick, and then we'll get to tuning it. Well, I got the bucket caps put on. I went ahead and greased everything. We got 1 pin, 2 pins, 3 grease points right there, 3 grease points right there for the bucket cylinder arm main pin and then arm cylinder pin, and then 2 grease points right there on either boom cylinder, 3 right there for the swing circle, and then there's 5 on the right hand side of the boom that you got to catch. And so done greasing, I'm gonna fold this thing back up, go up here and put on the stickers on the boom, and then I'm gonna put a couple stickers on the side, sticker on the back, just so everybody knows who sold this machine. And then I'm gonna get into the power tuning process. Alrighty, folks, well, I finished most of the cycle time tests, and everything as far as cycle time goes is in spec. Check the track, swing, all of my bucket and everything like that is in spec, so my pump flows are looking good. What I'm doing now is checking main relief pressures, and when I went to check the arm and the boom pressures just now, I was within spec, but the spec for RMN at power max is 350 kg plus 10 minus 15, and I was reading 345. And then when I hit my one touch power max button, I didn't hardly get any kind of increase in pressure. So what I'm going to do right now is check the main reliefs on each control valve and each pump independently, and the way you do that is by checking each track relief pressure. And you can do that one of 2 ways. If the machine has a bucket on it and it's able to reach the track like this one is, I just basically just pull the arm all the way in, put it on the ground, and then roll the bucket into the track until it can catch one of these track grousers. And on this particular machine, it's got a long stick on it, so it's able to reach in and reach the track. On some machines, you're not able to do that, so what you're gonna have to do is get something to pin the sprocket with. And basically what that means, pinning the sprocket, means that you are putting a piece of metal or something in between this track sprocket right here and the frame, I usually, I've done it before and used a, gosh, it's been a long time, but I used to have a piece of metal that was about 4 inches in diameter, and I would literally just set it right here in whatever sprocket tooth is next, and it'll come up and just hit this frame right here and deadhead the travel motor. This is effectively doing the same thing. I've got it hooked in the track grouser. I've done this dozens and dozens of times. You might say, oh, you're gonna tear up the undercarriage. No, you're not. You're not gonna tear it up, dude. I do this literally every time, and it's just the easiest and quickest way that I found to do it. So we're gonna throw it to wide open throttle, turn off my automatic engine idle down, and then I'm going to slowly put pressure on the right track. I'm checking the right track right now, and we're gonna watch our front pump pressure come up. Again, go slowly just in case you don't have a good grip on the track. We're gonna watch that main relief pressure come up. Slowly, just loading it up. Alright, so we're at 366 kg on the front pump and right track, and I'm gonna see if I can do this. Roll the bucket out. There we go, I'm gonna pick it up. Go over my little camera stand over there, aka my slammer jammer that I put in the ground. Don't need to forget that I brought that over here, and I need to watch my back end over here so I don't hit this little building. I'm gonna get out and move that. See if I can do it without moving it. Yeah, I'm gonna get out and move that stake right quick. I got my bucket hooked on my track again. This time I'm going to do the left track and rear pump. Slowly put pressure on it. Watch my track over there. If you just go hog on the pedal, sometimes it'll skip a tooth and scare the piss out of you. So I'm at 365 kgs of travel pressure. I'm gonna go get my book right quick and just double check what my travel pressure is supposed to be, because your mains on your boom are supposed to be 350 plus 10 minus 15. So let's go over there and see what our pressure is supposed to be. So on further investigation, this is my travel pressure spec right here, and I'm doing KGCM. It's supposed to be 360 plus or minus 15 kg, and I'm at 364, 365 right now on both pumps. I always like to set it at the upper end of the spec, just because, you know, why not get that extra performance out of the machine if they let you have it. So I'm gonna go get my tooling, and I'll show you how to adjust those real quick. They're in a pretty easy spot to get to, and I'll show you how to do that. Well, here we are on the top of the machine. This is behind the cab, and this normally is covered up by those panels. You just pull those panels off, and there is a little bracket that goes right here that holds this wiring harness. I went ahead and took that off just to make it easier so I can get to that relief valve just a little easier. And you know, common sense would have it, I wish they could set it up where the left control valve controls the left track, the right control valve controls the right track, but they don't set it up like that. This is the 5-spool and 4-spool. That's how they designate these. So your 5-spool is going to control your left track. The 4-spool has your right track relief on it. So these are the two main relief valves right under here, and they're connected together. This is a pilot line. So the way I'm going to adjust the low pressure, they have it backwards in the book for whatever reason, or the terminology that I'm used to is backwards, but the big jam nut adjusts your main relief setting. That's what we just checked. So whenever you go to tighten these in, you're going to adjust the big part first, because if you go to adjust the little part, you just don't do that. Okay, the little jam nut on here is for your power plus or your second stage, because this is a 2-stage relief. You have your first stage, and then your second stage is assisted by the by your pilot hole. So the first stage is the one we're going to adjust first, and then once we get done with that, I may or may not set the power plus for whatever reason. not much is happening when I'm hitting my Power Plus button. I'm gonna have to get in the book and make sure I'm doing it right, because I think if your push-up switch is on, your Power Plus doesn't do, I don't know. It's been a long time since I messed with one of these open center systems on these 650s. I'm pretty well versed in the PC 900s and the newer generation of open center systems that Komatsu's going to. They're all laid out a little bit different, but that's opening up a can of worms to talk about that new system and all the changes. So I'm gonna adjust this main relief for the left track. I'm gonna adjust them both the same amount. One turn on this adjustment nut is 125 kg, so I'm literally gonna be able to break that jam nut loose and sneeze on it, and it'll probably go up the 10 kgs that I needed to go up. If I go up a little bit out of spec, I'm not gonna be super upset about it, but your main thing when you're adjusting these things is you wanna get them close. You don't wanna have one relief valve that's say 360 kg and then your other be 10 or 15, 20 kg off from that one, because your pumps are gonna be not running a balanced pressure. So you wanna have them both adjusted to the same amount, basically. I'm gonna go ahead and adjust these, and then we'll hop back in the cab and see what it did. So one thing I forgot to mention is I like to put a Sharpie mark on these things just as a reference point. You don't have to draw a line all the way across them, but I just like to have a reference of how far I went. I just gave each of these about 1/6 of a turn. So I'm gonna go back here in the cab and check and see what that did for my pressure. And hopefully that's all we gotta do, and then we'll be done. All right, we're gonna go ahead and check the left track first. Again, we're gonna be gentle with it. Slowly build up our pressure. All right, so we're at 377, 378, 375. And the oil's still pretty cold right now. So we're at about 375 kg. I'm gonna move over here to my other side, do my right track. That's pretty much right on the money where I wanna have that setting. So I'm gonna move over here very carefully and not hit my truck. Set the boom down, grab the track. See if I can, there we go. And we're gonna get the right track going right quick. We're gonna ease onto that one. So that one's just a touch higher by about 3 or 4 kg, but they're within 5 of each other. That's really what I like to see on these. So I am not gonna mess with, I think I just broke the end of that tooth off. Let me see. Oh yeah, I just broke the lifting eye off that tooth. Oh well, they'll get worn off eventually. So that is good. Got it right where I wanted. I raised it about 10 kgs, which is what I was shooting for. We're right there at the upper limit of the spec that the book gives us. So I'm gonna let this thing idle and cool down. And while it's cooling off, I'm gonna go ahead and collect my crap, put those covers back on that I took off, and then we'll be done. You know what sure is nice when you're working on something and you drop a tool through that labyrinth of hoses and valves and everything else, and it goes bing bong, ching ching, ping bong, bing da down. It hits the ground. That's always a nice feeling. Half the time, it ends up in the swing circle and I gotta spend 2 hours taking belly pans off, but I don't today. Well, that's it for today, folks. I hope you learned something by my little, hot and fast make ready on this PC650-11. I tried not to get too far into the weeds on the hydraulic stuff just because this was kind of a general overview. I'm waiting on a job where I do have a really difficult hydraulic issue, but lately, for whatever reason, we haven't been having very many issues with hydraulics, so I haven't been able to make a video on one. So that's essentially my process of doing a quick make ready on a PC650-11. Like I said, I just had to put the bucket on and pin the arm cylinder. It came most of the way put together. So as always, man, I appreciate you watching. If you made it this far, do me a favor, like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on post notifications. And until next time, this is the Shade Tree Certified YouTube channel. See you later.